Okay, folks, we're starting to wrap up the job on the 2001 Ford F-250 with a 7.3 liter diesel. Initially came in, I was requested to change the turbo. No one ever told me why. They just said, hey, change the turbo. But then they did say something about it was change the turbo. Oh, and it was losing oil. It wasn't leaking anywhere, just losing it. So that was all I knew. I changed the turbo. The person who asked me to change the turbo left for the weekend. I got no more information on it, so I changed the turbo. But when I removed the turbo, I checked it, and I checked the shaft, the turbine shaft, to see if whether or not it was moving back and forth or had any play in it. Had no play in it, no excess play, no nothing. So I thought to myself, I didn't think the turbo was bad. But since I didn't have any more information, I didn't know why they were asking me to change it. So I went ahead and changed it. With the exception of knowing that it was losing oil, but I knew that it wasn't losing oil because of that, because when I pulled it off of its base, it wasn't leaking. Anyhow, changed the turbo. Well, so happens one of the guys that works here at the car lot was talking to me one night, or not one night, I'm sorry, one day. And he said, oh, you know, this thing has always had a problem starting up. Always had a hard start problem. And I'm like, really? He said, yeah, ever since, you know, we got it. And I was like, really? So we kept talking. And I said, well, I really, you know, I told him how much I appreciated him giving me the information, because it was one more piece of the puzzle that I didn't know. So as I kept thinking about it, did a little research, had an idea, thought maybe that it was leaking oil past the injector O-rings. Well, sure enough, I popped one of them out, maybe a couple or a few, I don't remember. And sure enough, O-rings were bad on quite a few of them. So changed the injector O-rings, installed them back in the truck. Still had a difficult time starting. I wasn't able to tell whether or not it was actually losing oil or not, because I put enough in there, but in looking back, I don't think that it was actually losing oil. It just filled up the oil galleys, filled up the pump from me actually draining it and putting the proper level in it. Well, when I went, after I started it, discovered that it was a little low. But in retrospect, I think that was because it, again, had to fill up the oil galleys, get inside of the pump, down to the injector. So to test my theory, when I tore it apart the second time, because I pulled the injectors back out, what I found was when I drained the oil, it was pretty much the same amount I had poured inside of the truck. So it was actually, I fixed one problem. However, I decided to send the injectors out to have them checked by a local diesel shop. Interestingly enough, when I first made the diagnosis, that's what I was going to do. But then I changed my mind and said, well, let me just change the injector rings and see if I get any difference. Anyhow, when I sent the injectors out, I was told that we had 4 bad injectors. So it was a good thing that I did send them out. A bad thing that I did double work. But nevertheless, we did discover that we had bad O-rings. I mean, 4 bad injectors. Got the injectors back, installed them. Forgot to, well, I rotated the engine with the starter from the key to get all the oil out of the cylinders. Apparently, I didn't get them all out. So when I installed the injectors, discovered that I had a problem where the engine wouldn't spin over when I would hit it with the key. Got down on the crankshaft with socket and a breaker bar, would not move. You could hear it sound like it was squeezing. It was on a combustion compression stroke on one of the cylinders, but it was what you could hear is a gurgling sound. So there was something on top of the piston, some type of liquid. So anyway, discover that I apparently still had some oil or some fluid of some sort in there on top of the cylinder. So needless to say, I had to pull the injectors out because you don't know which one it is. It was probably fair to assume that it was the last 2 injectors on cylinders on each side of the engine, but since the engine tilts back about maybe 10-15 degrees or so. Yeah, maybe about 15-20 degrees or so. But at any rate, the whole point is, got the oil out, reinstalled the injectors, had a difficult time getting it started again. I'm like, well, I know, you know, that we got that problem situated, but you know what? I think this feed pump is bad, and it would make sense because it's pumping oil back through. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned this. Yes, so what I discovered was that, again, I was thinking, well, where is the oil going? It can only be going one place. It has to be going into the fuel tank. Well, here you go, folks. This is what the diesel fuel looks like in this truck. It's got plenty of oil and engine oil in it. The next thing was, again, it had a difficult time starting. Again, I was like, what in the world would, could this be? Well, I kept thinking about it, and I was like, wait a minute. That feed pump, electric fuel pump, could be bad. And I thought to myself, if it's, for one, it's probably old, but not only that, it's been having to pump oil from the gas tank all the way back to the front. Probably wouldn't damage it too much, as much or as quick as it would if it was gasoline, but maybe there's some damage. See this right here? This is low fuel pressure. I mean, it's barely, as a matter of fact, the pump keeps jumping. So the pump is bad itself, and I'm glad that I actually bought a new one. So I have a new one. I'm gonna, show the customer tomorrow this video, because I think it's important for him to see just how bad this thing is. Look how the pump is vibrating. See that? It's just shaking. Sometimes it'll straighten out. It won't do it at all. And all of a sudden it'll do it again. So we're gonna go ahead and keep pumping our tank out, and that's how we're gonna work this.